Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into the incredible story of a man who, with what was basically just a tube of carefully ground glass, completely redrew our map of the universe and ended up paying a devastating price for it. This is the story of Galileo Galilei. So this is really the core question we're digging into. For almost 1,400 years, the entire world operated on a fundamental assumption about the cosmos. It was an idea woven into philosophy, religion, and just plain common sense. Galileo's observations? Well, they didn't just challenge that idea. They absolutely shattered it. Okay, let's set the stage a bit. Before Galileo, the universe felt orderly and intuitive. The heavens up there were this realm of divine perfection, totally eternal and unchanging. And everything, the sun, the planets, all the stars, they all revolved around us, right here on Earth. This wasn't just some theory. For everyone, it was the truth. And this slide right here, this captures the cosmic showdown of the 17th century. On one side, you've got the Ptolemaic system, a 1,400-year-old model with Earth parked right at the center of everything. And look, it wasn't just dogma. For centuries, it actually worked pretty well for predicting where the planets would be. But on the other side, you have this radical and frankly dangerous idea from Copernicus, that the sun was the center, and we were just another planet hurtling through space. So the tool that would end up settling this whole debate didn't come from some lone genius in a lab. It actually came from Dutch spectacle makers. In 1608, patents for spyglass started popping up. But the real key moment is May 1609. Galileo just hears about this new toy. He never actually sees one, but just based on the description, he figures out how it works and decides, you know what, I can build a much, much better one. And this chart, wow, this really shows you the leap he made. Those original Dutch spyglasses, they could magnify things about 3 times. Galileo's first attempt immediately tripled that to 9. But then, by using the amazing glassmakers in Venice and really mastering the art of grinding lenses himself, he created an instrument with 20 to 30 times magnification. This wasn't a toy anymore. It was a true window on the cosmos. So, with this powerful new instrument in his hands, Galileo did something that surprisingly almost nobody had really thought to do. He pointed it at the night sky, and in 1610, he published his absolutely mind-bending observations in this slim little book called Sidereus Nuncius, or The Starry Messenger, and believe me, it changed everything. First up, the moon. It was supposed to be this perfect, smooth sphere made of some kind of heavenly substance they called ether, but Galileo saw something completely different. He used his training in Renaissance art, his understanding of light and shadow, or chiaroscuro, and he realized the patterns he was seeing were actually mountains and craters. He even calculated how tall they were. The implication was just staggering. The moon wasn't some perfect celestial orb. It was a world, a place, just like Earth. Then he moved on to Jupiter. He spotted these 4 tiny little stars that seemed to be dancing around the planet. Night after night, he tracked them, and he realized they were moons, orbiting Jupiter as it moved through space. This was a massive blow to the old model. It proved, right there, that not everything revolved around the Earth. And it also answered a huge objection to a moving Earth. Yeah, a planet could absolutely move and still keep its moons with it. Okay, but if Jupiter's moons were a huge blow, this next discovery, this was the smoking gun. In the old Earth-centered model, Venus could never ever show a full phase. Kind of like a full moon. It was just geometrically impossible. But Galileo looked, and he saw Venus go through a full cycle of phases. This was visual, undeniable proof that Venus had to be orbiting the sun. The 1,400-year-old Ptolemaic system was mathematically dead. But here's the thing. When you kill an idea that's been the bedrock of reality for 14 centuries, you make some extremely powerful enemies. Galileo's discoveries weren't celebrated by everyone. For the established authority of the Church, they were a direct and very dangerous threat. And the first official blow came in 1616. The Holy Office declared the whole sun-centered theory a heresy. Galileo was personally warned by a cardinal to completely abandon the idea. He was told he could talk about it, sure, but only as a mathematical trick, a hypothesis, not as a physical reality. For years, Galileo actually stayed pretty quiet. But then his friend became Pope Urban VIII, and he must have felt a little more confident. In 1632, he published his masterpiece, the dialogue concerning the 2 chief world systems. And this was his fatal error. He set up the debate as a conversation between three men, but he put the Pope's very own arguments for the Earth-centered model into the mouth of a character he named Simplicio, which basically means simpleton. The Pope was absolutely enraged. He saw it as a personal insult. And so the hammer came down. At 69 years old, frail and sick, Galileo was dragged to Rome to face the Inquisition. And the charge wasn't just about being wrong. It was vehement suspicion of heresy, a charge that carried the very real threat of torture and death. I mean, the psychological pressure must have been just immense. It all came to a head right here. On June 22nd, 1633, Galileo, the man who had revealed the true nature of the cosmos, was forced to kneel before his accusers and publicly renounce the truth he had seen with his own eyes. He had to say the words to abjure, curse, and detest the idea that the earth moves. And the sentence was just devastating. He was placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. All his books were banned. His health completely collapsed. He had crippling arthritis. And then, in the most tragic irony, the man who saw farther than anyone in human history went completely blind. And to compound the heartbreak, his beloved daughter, Maria Celeste, who was his greatest supporter, died shortly after he was sent home. Now, you'd think this is where the story ends, right? Defeated, imprisoned, blind, and grieving. But you'd be wrong. They could imprison his body, but there was no way they could imprison his mind. During his confinement, Galileo wrote his true magnum opus, Two New Sciences. It actually had to be smuggled out of Italy just to be published. And this book wasn't about the stars. It was about the science of motion itself. He established the law of falling bodies, that the distance something falls is proportional to the square of the time. And he came up with the principle of inertia, the idea that an object in motion stays in motion. With this one book, he laid the entire foundation for what we now call classical mechanics. So what does all of this mean for us today? Well, the final act of Galileo's life wasn't really a tragedy. It was the beginning of a whole new era of science, a revolution that is still going on to this day. You can draw a perfectly straight line. Galileo establishes the fundamental principles of how things move. Then Isaac Newton comes along and synthesizes all that work into his law of universal gravitation. And those laws are precisely what allow us to launch rockets, to send probes to Jupiter, and to see to the very edge of the universe with telescopes that are the direct descendants of Galileo's first little spyglass. In 1642, Galileo died, still a prisoner in his own home. But in the very same year that Galileo's light went out, the man who would take his work to its ultimate conclusion was born. It's almost as if the torch was being passed directly from one generation to the next. Which really leaves us with one final, fascinating question. Galileo's story is such a powerful reminder that science isn't a book of answers. It's a process of always questioning. It really makes you wonder, what comfortable, unquestionable truths that we all accept today are just waiting for the next person with a new tool to come along and completely shatter them?
Thank you so much for your time today. If you learned something new, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like, comment, and subscribe to Info Now. We'll see you in the next one.